Room 442 is brought to you by North Star Bets. That's a win.
Welcome into Room 442. I'm Sara, joined with a very special guest here, Steven Moore of TLN and the Laziali.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here. We have a lot to get into. A massive match on Saturday. Inter Milan and Manchester City. Now, there's a lot of talk around Man City. We were just talking about this off air in regards to them being the favorites, but really the heavy favorites here. Just from the start, are people overlooking Inter right now?
Yeah, I think, of course, the odds are going to be with Man City. Their team is so stacked on the depth side and also in their starting 11, where I think, they have a core group right now, but I think even Guardiola might be overthinking of who should I play at this particular time, depending on how the matches have gone this season. Inter have won two titles already this season, 2 cups. So, going into this looking for a treble as well, like Man City, I think they've been overlooked because they are a very good side. They did finish third in Serie A, but they were without Lukaku for the first little bit of the season. So I think they have a very good team on paper too, and I look at this side by side, and I definitely think that they're going to give them a good run for their money on Saturday.
I think the way Inter started this season, it wasn't the best. First of all, their Champions League group was difficult, right? Of course, with Bayern and Barca, of course, which they knocked out Victoria Pilsen. But they kind of started off the season a little bit slow. Yeah. But it was after the World Cup and in the new year when we really saw Inter really come into their form. And you mentioned Romelu Lukaku. Since he's been back, in the last 8 matches, he has 7 goals, 4 assists. And of course, Lautaro Martinez, same thing, 7 goals, 3 assists. So this team is really rounding into form when they need to.
Absolutely. I think it's the perfect time. And also Edin Dzeko, proven goal scorer as well. I think he's actually leading goals right now ahead of Lautaro and Lukaku in the Champions League right now. So it's definitely a good time for them to kind of get back in form. I think everyone knows what Lukaku and Martinez are capable of. Mm-hmm. But I do think it's going to be up to them on Saturday. They really got to be a difference maker because as we've seen, when they're on, they're on. But with the Inter struggle at the beginning of the year because they just could not convert their chances. And even throughout the season and the campaign, it was an odd one because Inzaghi was always under the wire going what's going on here, but it was ultimately just the missed chances that they were not being able to put away. They were creating, they were playing well defensively, and they were just slipping up a little bit, but now they've kind of brought everything together, and I think it's definitely the right time, and having the options with I think even Correa is going to be fit for the game on the weekend too. I know he's very good in the dribbling side of things. People would have liked to see a little bit more from him this year, but having Lukaku and Lautaro right now, hopefully starting on the weekend with Dzeko off the bench would definitely do them justice if they're able to perform.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing we were talking about off air was that this is a final, and even though Manchester City are the favorites, and I think they are still the slight favorites when you compare the two squads, of course, and Pep Guardiola, one of the best coaches we've seen in our generation for sure, but it's a final. Anything can happen. It's a one-off game. It's not tournament, it's not league-style football where it's based on consistency. This is just one match. So does Inter have, kind of a little bit to back themselves there in that sense, knowing that maybe they're going to play, typical Italian-style football. You're parking the bus, maybe hoping to even go into extra time and penalties. Is that something that they're going to go in thinking about?
Yeah, so I don't think Inter plays so much parking the bus. I think they're set to a 3-5-2, and one thing that we've seen this year is actually City has struggled against them in the league.
Brentford.
Like Tottenham and Brentford. Antonio Conte, Italian manager.
Yeah.
So you see that they have the core edge on Guardiola with that regard and that aspect. I'm actually interested to see if Guardiola is going to line up with a 4 at the back, 4-3-3 like he has this season, or the 3-4-2-1 or 3-4-1-2, depending on what he wants to play with. So it's a little bit interesting on that side of things. But Inzaghi is also a cup manager. Mm-hmm. He has won with Lazio. He also came to Inter and said,
"The king of cups,
I am
if
proven
you will."
I'm the king of cups. Someone else like Mourinho, maybe he's bound to be something like that in the future, right? As a young and upcoming manager, doing very well with Lazio, taking his chance, getting the opportunity to go to Inter after Conte left and went to the Premier League. And now you're seeing him work his magic there, right? So I definitely think that there's an opportunity for Inzaghi, but also Inter to take advantage of this. If they play their game, they can definitely give Man City a run for their money. And like you said, I think it is going to be a very close game. I think it is a one-off game, and depending on what happens and if they're able to control Haaland and if they're able to kind of sort out the defensive aspect of things, because it does look like Acerbi, Bastoni and Darmian are going to be that back three. If they are saying what they're going to be able to do to control Haaland and watching the replays and the tapes, I definitely think that it's going to be a close game, and it's going to go to Probably the extra time, maybe even the penalty shootouts, and let the football gods decide on that one. But yeah, definitely.
Let's talk a little bit about Inzaghi, because you're very familiar with this manager, being the Lazio fan that you are. You mentioned, he's the king of cups. He's never lost a cup final. And I think this is something that we're not talking about enough. The media is not talking about enough. Inzaghi is a very talented manager as well. I think just because maybe going against the likes of Pep Guardiola, who is so, a household name at this point. But Inzaghi has experience in finals. And as you mentioned, the 3-5-2 lineup as well that Inter has is something that City struggle with. But what is Inzaghi bringing to this Inter team in this final specifically, because he knows how to do this?
Yeah, no, definitely the experience for one. I know everyone looks at Guardiola and knows that he's able to get the best out of his players. Even when he's able to sign a player that is already supposed to be at their peak, he takes them to the next level. And that's something Inzaghi does on every team he's been with so far, with Lazio and with Inter. We saw with a limited budget at Lazio, and it's kind of same thing with Inter right now, what's going on the financial aspect of things. He's doing what he can with the squad at his disposal. It's an upgrade up from what he's been able to do at Lazio, but it's the same situation whereby bringing in a 34-year-old Acerbi and transforming him at Lazio, but now also at Inter to kind of lead that core defense when you have the likes of Skriniar or Bastoni. He kind of put him into that and said, you're going to be my man, you're going to be my guy this season, and it's turned out very well. Same thing with the players on the midfield aspect of things. I think Inzaghi plays a very different 3-5-2 compared to what most managers play, whereby it kind of looks like a 3-5-1-1 at times, depending on where it goes in the shift and defensively. He's able to kind of incorporate the team on the flanks very well with Di Marco and with Dumfries this season. A lot of people have been critical of the situation of who should play where. They even have Gosens on the bench, who was one of the best left wing backs in Serie A over recent years with Atalanta. But being able to use both of the strikers in Lautaro and Lukaku when they're able to work off of each other, the Lula combination is very lethal. So despite them sitting back a little bit at times, probably to try to contain the Man City defense, or the Man City attack, and the onslaught of attacks, I think that if they're able to build up the attack from Brozovic, which is going to be very instrumental in this game, I think they'll be able to kind of break through that Man City, that tough core, because obviously we do know that they play with sometimes the two CDMs with Rodri and Stones, which are hard to break down as well in front of the back three. But if they're able to kind of get in between in that play, they should be able to do some damage. Yeah,
I expect the midfield from both sides to get very gritty. It's going to be a fight in the middle of the pitch for this one. But let's now look. Okay, Inter haven't been in a Champions League final since the majestic Inter of 2010. Mourinho, Cambioso, Quaresma, Schneider. Like this was a team for like the generations. No one will forget this Inter Milan. But when you look at this team now, not to discredit any of the players, but this isn't the same kind of Titan football that we saw from Mourinho and those guys. Yet here we are in a Champions League final with a team that, like you mentioned, Inzaghi basically, didn't go out and spend, which is an issue that Conte had and why he left the club, but he's using these older guys in the right positions. And now they've made it to a final, which is really, I think, outstanding for the club, but also credit to the manager.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's something that with the way things have gone so far, obviously with the UEFA Conference League and UEFA Europa League, where we're not liking the Italian sides, we're definitely not liking what we've seen so far. But I think, as we say in Italian, third time's a charm. And I definitely think that this could be the time that it kind of happens. And I think most people are definitely hoping for this to be the time that it happens. I think if this happens, it'll be one of the bigger upsets that we've seen, despite us saying that it is the one-off game, despite us saying that it should be very close, and Man City are favored. Something just tells me Inter can give them a good run for their money. I know that they've had an easier route to the final when you look at the likes of what Man City have had to beat to be able to get there. And it's also an interesting aspect when I looked back on the scores, whereby Inter only lost both times to Bayern. Both very attacking side teams. Man City took it to Bayern, and they beat them both legs, or beat them once and drew them the other time, right? They were able to take full advantage. So it's another kind of interesting aspect of things when you look at it on paper to say, why did that happen? How are they going to investigate that game, and how can they put it to full effect to beat them? Yeah,
another thing, when I was looking up Inter's road to the final, they have 8 clean sheets in 10 matches here in their Champions League campaign this season. That's incredible. And I think it's just overshadowed because City have games where they beat RB Leipzig 7-0, Real Madrid 4, So I think it's just the numbers are getting overlooked, but Inter really have done a fantastic job in this tournament this season. So I have to ask you now, what are your predictions for this match on Saturday? Yeah. And what do you expect from Inzaghi and from Inter?
Yeah, so I'll give you two predictions. I'll give you my hopeful prediction. I definitely think I would like to say Inter for a victory. I'd like to say maybe a 2-1 or 3-1 victory. But on a realistic note, I think it's definitely going to be something where it's more close together, maybe a 1-1 or 2-2 game going into the final minutes. And I kind of see it going into extra time. And despite, me trying to bank on Inter and bank on Inzaghi, I think Man City they have the resources on the bench. They have the ideas. If Guardiola doesn't overanalyze, if he doesn't overthink like we know he's done in recent years, I think that this can be the time he finally wins it and wins that treble this year. So I think I'm going to have to give the edge to City on this one, but it could go either way again.
I completely agree. I think I'm going to give City the edge as well, just because of the way they've played and the players that they have, but I do think this game is going to be a lot closer than what people expect. I don't expect it to be a 3-0, a 4-0, absolutely not. If someone's getting on the scoreboard for Inter, who's it going to be?
Yeah, so it's a tricky one. So I was actually looking at Lukaku's record against Man City and also in the Champions League this year. 18 games he's played City. 3 times he's won over his career. Very tough.
There you
Very
go.
Tough. So if I'm going to put someone on the scoreboard, I think it has to be Martinez. I think he needs to step up. He has been the leading goal scorer this year for Inter, and I think he can be the one that's going to make the difference. But Lukaku also has to supplement that. Lukaku has to help in. So I think I'm going to give Lukaku and Martinez both a goal. Maybe off the bench to Checo.
There you go. You heard it. Steven Moore is calling the Lula, both of them to score. But this is Inter Milan, Manchester City, the Champions League final, the game we have all been waiting for this Saturday.
Room 442 is brought to you by North Star Bets. That's a win.